Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Giants, giantess, see also Gilgamesh. Contact Report 007.
The celestial sons, or starfarers, as we want to call our forebears, were at home on many different planets of stars, in a different space-time configuration or far away from the Sol system, whereby the planets were fundamentally different in climatic terms. Hence, they also produced other races which were able to adapt to the climate from the beginning. Due to the climate conditions, also a corresponding skin color developed, of which there are innumerable in the universe. Their body sizes were also different because, depending on the gravity of the planet in question, they ranged from only 50 centimeters tall up to several meters. There were and are even beings, which you call gigantic ones, giants or titans, and such beings too once endued the earth with life. They too produced offspring here, but they were gradually exterminated because they were usually very malicious and exercised tyranny. The different color races of today are, thus, descendants of our variously colored forebears, who came from different planets of foreign stars. Well, you are right with your view that the human beings of the earth are not descendants of the apes. They were partially begotten by our forebears, who also mixed themselves with earth beings who were simply called Eaves at that time. But the earth beings at that time were of the most diverse forms and kinds. Some of them were completely wild creatures of human-like forms, some of which had been marooned on the earth in earlier millennia by our forebears, that is, their descendants. These descendants of the marooned were abused by foreign spacefarers. The Eaves were, besides Earth-created hominid living creatures, nothing more than very wild descendants of those marooned thousands of years ago, from whom at that time any tools were taken away. But since our forebears were mixed races of different colors and sizes, they of course also produced different colors and races of different sizes, completely according to their characteristics. The smallest ones were 50 centimeters tall, while the largest and most vicious ones reached some 12 meters. Their appearance was also varying, and some type of them were only remotely reminiscent to human forms. They were left to die out or were killed if they were too vicious. In many cases, they hid themselves in far remote areas and survived for thousands of years, as their average age was about 1,500 years. But little by little, they also became victims of the time or of the human beings. The last of the vicious ones, whose life was ended with Gewaltsamkeit, died a little more than 230,000 years ago. Today, according to our knowledge, only 7 such beings of the old human life forms still live on the earth, where they remain so well hidden that they will certainly never be found and will one day die a peaceful death, and that without descendants, because they have become too old and passive for propagation. More common than these gigantic ones, Titanic and Cyclops, as you call them, were the simple giants. They often served great and power-greedy rulers. They were called Goliaths and were especially used for purposes of war.
Contact Report 069.
Easter Island and Tiahuanaco are more than 5,000 kilometers apart, and yet they are directly related to each other. However, the history of the connection goes back to very early times and ended only 2,548 years ago, calculated back from today, 1976, 5 ISM 2 before Emmanuel. As I once explained to you, the last decisive settlement of the Earth by extraterrestrial intelligences took place about 13,500 Earth years ago. As you know, several of the immigrant horde became renegades, including a man in the rank of a half-Ishwish called Viracocha, who was already very old and extremely power-hungry. Under his patronage and his cruel leadership, the highlands of Tiahuanaco at an altitude of about 4,000 meters were conquered, as was the Delta Island, which you call Easter Island. After this conquest, Viracocha settled with a special bodyguard of cherubim on the small island Mott, which is situated in front of Easter Island, and which you call Motunui, or similar to my knowledge today. He and his followers, escaped Lyrans like many others who came to the Earth, were of gigantic physique, by earthly measure about 11 meters tall, 36 feet. Similar events took place in the areas you call Pisco, Nazca, and Sacsayhuaman because the same giants had settled there. After several centuries, the exact time is also veiled to us. The giants were attacked by a sudden epidemic that was unknown to them and cost the lives of many of them. Finding no cure for the epidemic, they fled Earth in their spaceships, set off into space, and have since disappeared. In general, many concerns about these giants and their activities on Earth at that time are mysterious to us, and we cannot find a solution for it.
Okay, but these giants, were they only in the places you mentioned? Or were they, or others, in other places on the Earth?
This race stayed exclusively in the areas I mentioned. Further, other races of gigantic proportions populated all continents. Also, Cyclopes and Titans as well as dwarfs settled on all continents. They came and went, or they passed away for whatever reason.
Aha! Were the gods and demigods of Greek mythology such settlers from space?
Sure, they were a splinter group of descendants of the Hyperboreans.
Oh well. Now I understand to some extent the connections. Good old Heracles said some very wondrous things, which just refer to it. But now I wonder how big these Hyperborean descendants must have been. Because with Asked I once had the opportunity to see something that will probably remain closed to the Earth human forever. And exactly according to what I saw, these Greek mythology gods or demigods must have been several meters tall. Heracles alone must have measured about 3 meters, 9.8 feet, right?
Sure.
Well then, is it also correct that Noah was around 3.10 meters tall, 10.2 feet? While Adam actually measured around 5 meters.
Sure, only Adam was less than 5 meters tall. He was still a little more than a meter shorter than that measure. 12.5 feet.
But how is it that Earth humans are so small today despite their giant ancestors?
It is primarily the mixing factors with the Earth-originating human forms that are to blame for this. The crossbreeding genuses, as well as all the influences of the Earth itself, which is only able to carry smaller human beings. Through these influences of the Earth, all of our own ancestors also changed in their size, because they were also giants in former times. In the course of the millennia, however, since they lived on Earth and became accustomed to it, they were subject to the alterational influences, so they became noticeably smaller in shape. Thus we, as late direct descendants of them, show the same average size as their terrestrial humans. There are exceptions, however, also with us, as you know, but also with you, whereby whole nations are affected by it. This is in addition to those breeds that have kept their original size since primeval times as dwarf or giant breeds.
But now I have another question about the giants in former times. In different places of our Earth have been found petrified footprints of humans, of believe it or not 90 centimeters length. How big were these people?
On average about 6.6 meters to 6.50 meters. 19.7 to 21.3 feet.
Aha, that is how I reckoned it. I just multiplied the foot length by the average size of today's human being and came to 95 meters. So I did not miss much. Can I usually use this calculation for such comparisons? Is it approximately correct?
Sure, it is even pretty accurate. That you came to the lower result is only because the petrified footprints of those giants came from people who had not yet grown up. So they are a bit smaller.
Contact Report 070 and note. The following excerpt refers to some ancient Plerian ancestors. See Contact Report 5, S67 to 193, Contact Report 9, S120 to 170, Contact Report 70, S23 to 181, and Contact Report 121, B79 to 90.
The human beings of that time, who were Titans.
Contact Report 250.
On Earth, besides dinosaur traces, there are also human footprints that are millions of years old. These are both impressions that are still of normal size today, as it were, and those that are gigantic and thus originate from giants or giants, etc., and are much older in origin than the oldest traces of hominids found or their bone finds, which can only be traced back to about 4.5 million years, although Earth-born humanoids lived 9 to 12 million years ago. However, there are also ancient impressions and human footprints in small and large form next to dinosaur traces or elsewhere, which are between 65 and 140 million years old. How do you explain this when the first primeval human, hominid life forms on Earth lived at the earliest 9 to 12 million years ago? I really mean prehistoric man.
This is neither a secret nor a riddle, because all footprints of people of all sizes, from the dwarf-like beings to the giants, etc., are not traces of terrestrial human life forms. The impressions truthfully come from humans of planets not from Sol who visited Earth many millions of years ago or came here to live here. Many of them also died here, whereby petrified traces, footprints, and bones can still be found in many places on Earth today and bear witness to this fact. Earth humans only existed 9 to 12 million years ago.
Contact Report 710.
With this I can say that the Earth foreigners, who are generally simply called extraterrestrials or aliens by the Earthlings, have in fact been around for a long time. They stayed here and worked in many ways, as did their distant descendants, but they have also been active on Earth for centuries and millennia up to the present day, flying around and in and out of the Earth, and are observed again and again around the world by the Earthlings, whereby the American continent is of particular importance in this respect. Their early ancestors worked in many different ways on Earth, and also in various countries in Asia, North Africa, and partly in Europe, but mainly in the early days in the North African country, which in later times was called Kemet, and then finally in later times Egypt, after which this name has been preserved until today. Your father Svath taught me during a leap in time into the past to the land there, where the Earth foreigners ruled at that time, whom he called Long Skulls and whom I have seen myself, that they had been on Earth for thousands of years. Because, in contrast to the round skulls of the human beings of Earth, they had skulls that were long and thickly protruding towards the back. They stood out unmistakably from the human beings of Earth, just as other Earth foreigners did around the world, such as giants up to about 3 meters tall, half-small people with large and somewhat V-shaped heads and excessively large eyes. Various such long skulls have also been found in modern times by archaeologists, etc., although to this day people still puzzle over what secret is connected with these skulls, which were not from human beings of the Earth, but belonged to Earth aliens.
Contact Report 826.
So also, for example, with regard to extraterrestrials who really came here, such as the long skull ones who came from outer space and to Earth, as Svath said, but which I should not say and keep silent about. However, they were human beings who were also able to mix with the human beings and did so, such as the long skulls and the giants and dwarves, of whom there is talk in fairy tales, who had instilled and taught the early earthlings many things.
Contact Report 829.
What is clear to me, however, is that some of the long-distance travelers rose up as gods who were then worshipped by the earthlings, and to whom human sacrifices were also made. Some of them were real giants of different sizes, but there were also human beings of normal sizes, and then also dwarfs of normal size, thus not microsomic human beings. Microsomia refers to humans with abnormally small bodies.
Contact Report 831.
But at that time there were also giants that were 3 meters, and even taller, some up to 4 meters or so. But despite their size, the giants were somehow able to mate with earthling women, so that even today the most distant offspring are still born, now as actual earthlings who are 2 meters or 30 meters tall or more.